welcome to Rising. We've got a jam-packed show for you today. Briahna, let's get started. Obviously, another tragedy unfolding before us, so we want to talk about that.
Yes, 3 children and 3 adults were shot and killed yesterday in a Nashville grade school. The suspect, 28-year-old Audrey Hale, was also shot and killed by the police. Hale is transgender and a former student of the Covenant School, a private Presbyterian school. Police say Hale left a manifesto detailing, quote, resentment for having to go to that school as the reason behind the massacre. Officials have also determined Hale was heavily armed with at least 2 assault rifles and kept detailed plans in preparation for the shooting, including by hand-drawing maps and conducting personal surveillance. So far, police believe Hale shot at random and that no individuals were targeted. Those killed have been identified as Evelyn Dykehouse, Haley Scruggs, and William Kinney, all age 9, Cynthia Peak, age 61, Catherine Coons, age 60, and Mike Hill, age 61.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre spoke about the tragedy at the podium yesterday. Let's watch some of that.
In his State of the Union, the president called on Congress to do something to stop the epidemic of gun violence, tearing families apart, tearing communities apart. How many more children have to be murdered before Republicans in Congress will step up and act to pass the assault weapons ban?
Meanwhile, over in CNN this morning, national security analyst Juliet Kayyem encouraged viewers not to be distracted by the shooter's gender identity.
Each of these school shootings has motive and means. Motive goes to the particular person, what's their mental health situation, what happened at the school, why did they choose that target? As Andrew was saying, what clues did they leave behind? What was their community seeing? And then the means. And then that's when you get the connectivity, right? That's when you start to see these are all starting to look the same, right? I sort of think now, like, we don't own guns in this country. Guns own us at this stage. And this is where we have to now focus on an important part of an agenda, which includes mental health, protecting our kids, fortifying schools, but also the connectivity, which is a certain kind of gun. Look, pronouns do not kill children, right? People with guns kill children, and it's going to be a distraction in our coverage and keep us from what we now know.
So, yeah, this in many ways is very similar to debates we've had on this issue so many times. Every time this happens, there's a back and forth about whether there are individual factors, whether it's mental health, et cetera, that cause this particular individual to abuse their constitutional privilege to have access to a gun, to own a gun, to kill people. In some cases, the person has procured the gun illegally, so they do not have a constitutional access to the gun, in which case people say that it's not really about a gun control issue, it's about an illegal act that wouldn't have been bound by gun restrictions whatsoever. Other people still say that if it's harder to access a gun even illegally because there are more protections or restrictions on gun owners, that it would have prevented the crime, and around we go. But this one has the additional added quirk of being one of the few. I think there's only been 4 ever reported mass shootings that involve someone with a non-traditional gender identity. And there are some conservatives, I would say, that are pointing to that as what caused this incident to the exclusion of any other factors.
Sure. I mean, we need to know more, obviously. The gender identity, it certainly seems potentially relevant. It is so this is someone who was a biological woman. It is so rare, as you know. It's incredibly rare for mass shootings, violence in general, but it's particularly mass shootings. We talk about the statistics of them. There's a lot of people often try to bring in the racial element, even though it actually does, for mass shooters at least, tracks pretty closely to the overall racial makeup of the population. That is not true of gender. Overwhelmingly, mass shooters are male. So it's so statistical. So this is something I want to learn more information about. What was this person's mental health? And obviously, and every time there's a mass shooting or an instance of violence that captures the nation's attention, there is always an effort by people on all sides of the political spectrum and in all corners of the media to try to explain where they're thinking, what led them to do it. What do they have an ideology? Is it identifiably political? Is it that they're just mentally ill? Are they lashing out at coworkers or at a school that they had some connection with, as it seems to be that was the case for this shooter, although it was a long time ago. I believe they said she was 28 now, so it's not.
Yeah,
not
and they identify obviously as a man, but yeah, they were 28 years old, so it was some time since he had been at that school. It's interesting. There's this take. Charlie Kirk, for instance, tweeted, "Instead of banning assault rifles, we should ban gender-affirming care for kids." It's an interesting kind of perspective, given that it seems, from what we know as of right now about their manifesto, that they resented going to a Christian school, a presumably more conservative school that might not have been as open to their transition and their, chosen gender identity. And having a response to that be, you want more kids to feel in that position, more kids to have that tension with their educational environments, is an odd one for me. I don't know. What do you make of that instinct to say, well, we have to put more kids in the scenario that the shooter was in, whereas they were wanting to present a certain way and wanting to live their lives a certain way, and their school environment presumably didn't allow them to, breeding that kind of resentment.
Right. I mean, I want a young person to have the educational experience that best aligns with their values and their family's values and is best for them. I think that's going to be different for a variety of kids. So no, I don't want to force one way or the other on young people. And we don't know in this case whether it's this person lashing out at an unaccepting kind of environment, or whether this person has deeper mental health problems, did get whatever kind of affirming or supportive care, but has a kind of mental health problem or some other problem. We don't know. And and at the end of the day, it's horrible and tragic regardless, because there's no amount of nothing this person went through or endured comes close to justifying their behavior, their violence against their murder of a half a dozen people, including 3 9-year-olds. Yeah. It's truly sickening, truly sickening. In so many cases, previously we've known that the individual was actually known to law enforcement. So far, I've not seen anything indicating that might be the case. As you said, sometimes it's a case where the person, they obtain the guns legally, but given there should have been more the law actually requires better vetting, and they shouldn't have been able to get the gun. We don't know if that's the case here. I also want to point out, because we've been very critical of law enforcement in somebody like Uvalde, where they stood around for forever as kids were dying. In this case, law enforcement, I think within 14 minutes of the shooting beginning, arrived on the scene. They came under fire. The shooter fired at them through windows, was shattering windows. I've seen some of the footage. They engaged the shooter. They did not hold back, wait for reinforcements, wait till it was safe. They charged the shooter, and they killed this individual. Mm-hmm. And it was 14 minutes from beginning to end, and undoubtedly saved more lives. So hopefully, when Columbine happened and the police waited outside forever, and we were supposed to learn from that. Police don't do, and it's in their training materials, don't wait, go in. Maybe that has sunk into enough police departments.
Yeah, well, they have gotten enough practice, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, we'll continue to follow that story, of course, and I'll tell you what's on my radar coming up next.